Friends, Robbie Calvo in the house. Welcome to the Guitar Show, Robbie.
Thank you very much.
So excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Friends, welcome to the Guitar Show, November the
Hi.
12th. Robbie is going to be wowing us with some pretty cool stuff today, using the looper pedal, talking about phrasing and the whole 9 yards. But I want to start off with a proper introduction of who Robbie is, because if you don't know who he is, you're gonna shortly, all right? Robbie, who hails from London, England, is a GIT grad who's been a professional musician, session player, songwriter, and teacher for more than 20 years. He's a well-established guitarist with notable works which include countless recordings with BBC, ITV, and PBS networks, creating television themes, and has been seen in live appearances for ABC. Robbie's primary passion is for education. He has 28 guitar instructional courses with TrueFire, all of which have resided on the company's best-seller list. Robbie hosts national guitar workshops for Yamaha guitars all over the U.S. and performs over 200 live shows a year as a solo artist, looping percussion, guitars, and vocals. Calvo's legacy of Nashville-penned songs are receiving radio airplay with country artists, and he continues to write, record, and produce TV themes with renowned English composer Dave Cook. There you go. Robbie.
Oh my God, that's a mouthful.
I know, right? And I know that we're just scratching the surface, because right before I started this, I was going through all of these bits and pieces for Robbie, and I said 22 guitar instructional courses, and he's like, 28. So, and in fact, Robbie's going to be doing one this week with us in regards to loopers and what have you, and learning how to phrase with loopers and all that. So you're going to share some of that with us today?
Absolutely, yeah. So we know the looper pedal is something that we can integrate into our practice routine, live routine, and it's just a great pre-production tool as well. So it's one of those things that, okay, if I'm going to teach you how to use the looper, once you've got music into it, then what do? So you've got to phrase your ideas, your rhythm parts, learn how to play overdub parts as a session player, for example.
Right.
Or for a band, as a band member. And then how do you phrase the correct scales, arpeggios, etc. like that over those things. So we're going to cover all of that in the course. So it's kind of a great phrase training course.
Yeah, I love that. So for folks that don't know what a looper pedal is, can you just give a real brief overview? And I think most people do know what it is, but then also this is, what a looper pedal does, or what it incites in a player, is so much bigger than just, oh, well, your part gets played back.
Gotcha.
But can you give just like a real brief overview, and we have the pedal cam and all that stuff, of just specifically what a looper does for anybody who's watching that doesn't know, and then we can talk a little bit about, in regards to, well, what does that do for you as a player other than just playing it back?
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So basically, guys, a looper is a portable recording device, or a pedal-based recording device. Now, of course, I'm using Line 6 Helix, but don't let that freak you out. It's the same functionality as a pedal-based, a small pedal-based looper. So what it allows you to do is you initiate a recording process, and you record the progression to the length that you want it, using the chords that you want to play. So in a lot of respects, it's a great way of you saying, designating what you want to play over, as opposed to trying to find a backing track.
Right.
So it's a great tool in that respect. And basically, it's got a couple of functions. You initiate the record process, it records it, and you have to initiate the out process, or the end of the recording, at the end of that phrase. And of course, that can be tricky for a lot of guys. They're playing, initiating, and you have to realize that your loop needs to be a specified length. Because if you're going to overdub over it, that's the length you have to overdub over.
Right.
So there's a lot to it. And what we're going to do in the course is I'm going to show you how to put a scratch track down as a guide. Because a lot of guys have got looper pedals, they've thrown them into the closet because it was so frustrating.
Right.
And I say, guys, it's not. Let me show you how to make this easy. So we're going to do that in the course. So there are a number of techniques to help you be better at looping. And once you're better at it, you'll start to realize the power it has.
Yeah.
not only for your practicing, but performance.
Yes.
On all of my songs, when I play live, at the end of the song, I loop the chorus section, and I improvise over it, and then sing backing lines over that and fade out.
Right.
And it's just been, well, it extends your vocabulary, doesn't it?
Right,
So
yeah.
if you played 3 minutes of a song, for example, and you loop the chorus, now you've got maybe another minute, minute and a half of improvising and fade out. So it extends your vocabulary. And, you know, when you're playing 30 songs a night and singing them,
Yeah.
it's nice to have a little bit of a break,
Yeah, indeed.
you know, vocally.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So it's a really great device for lots of things, and you know, we're going to show you how to use it for all of those things in the course that we film.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course we can talk about some of that today too.
Can you show us a little bit about like how your process, if you were to just come up with something, so you know, a lot of folks didn't know what you were doing here starting off in the beginning. We had the looper cam up and what have you, but just so so like what's going through your mind as you're doing this? So you know, you want to say create a guitar solo for a studio project, or you are in a live situation already, or you're just wanting to riff over the top of something to come up with parts or whatever.
Yeah.
So in any of those situations, it's a real similar approach, right? Mm-hmm. And so can you tell us a little bit about like how you would do this from scratch, including doing a scratch?
Absolutely.
Because I've never heard of doing that, and I think that's an exciting idea. I'd like to know a little bit more about that.
Okay, so let's go through the process of putting down, building a loop, the whole thing start to finish. First thing you have to know is how long is the progression I'm going to play over. If you don't know what it is, you can't execute it.
Right.
Right? And what's the tempo of that? So what I do is I'll rehearse what that guitar part will be. So for example, this. So an idea that we'll build upon. So. Okay, so let's count that out. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 3, 4. So we've got a 2-bar phrase, haven't we, that repeats.
Yeah.
Now I always say to guys, when you record your loop, do it twice. And there's a number of reasons why, and I'll tell you that in a minute.
Yes.
All right. Now we've got a tempo, haven't we? We can. About there is the tempo. Now that I know the tempo, what I do is I get my foot near my initiation button. You can see that it's right near my initiation pedal here.
Yeah.
So I get ready to do my loop. I'll
Yeah.
turn my guitar down to about halfway
Okay.
to get a scratch.
Right.
And what I'll do is I'll take that delay off. Okay. So I'm back to my looper pedal, dead dry.
Right.
Okay, so now I've got that scratch there. I'm basically muting the strings, guys.
Yeah.
And I'm going to count and play with my hand and initiate and record the scratch.
Okay.
Now, I said I was going to play it 2 times round, correct?
Right.
So I have to record the scratch twice round.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to do 8 bars. Right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, and I'm going to leave it in record mode. I could come out and rehearse,
Okay.
but I'm going to do it in record mode. And I'm going to now overdub over the top of that. Now I'm going to put a riff down on top of that. I'm out of record, but I'll go back in once I'm going to rehearse my riff.
Okay.
Okay, let's put some delay on. Okay, so I'm going to record my riff, guys. Okay, now I've got a loop in there, right? So I'm going to improvise now over this.
What's so valuable there with that last lick that you recorded is it made a spot where you intentionally weren't stepping on it, right?
Exactly.
Which is like a vocal line,
yeah.
which is why this process is so valuable once you learn it, because it makes you have to, like you did your and then you did you didn't step on that.
Right.
So a lot of players in the beginning, right, they just want to kind of play their scales over and over over the top of something, but this is almost forcing you, just like if you were playing with a band or a singer, to think about phrasing.
Absolutely. Well, that's why I put these things together, is because they're training tools to help people phrase. And I say, if there's a riff or a motif in place, don't step on it. So phrase around it. So what you have to do is, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, ba-da, bam, bam, bam. So you've got 2 beats where you shouldn't be playing.
Yeah.
Or sustain over it.
Yeah.
So you've basically got a bar and a half to play a lick. And I find that's plenty of time to play a 2-bar phrase, and then let the riff breathe. And so it's a great way of training you to package ideas and phrases. Now, you heard me repeat ideas, and I do this thing called 3+1. So it's 3 2-bar phrases that are slightly developed each time. And then the 4th line takes you on a crescendo. So then I've got an 8-bar solo, haven't I?
Yeah.
That is packaged and ready to go. Do you want me to do it?
I would love to see, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is, so listen to what I'm doing, guys. I'm going to do 3 similar licks. I'm going to develop them each time, and that last line will be my run towards the end of the solo. Right?
Almost like a turnaround.
Yeah.
Something that's saying, hey, here we go.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that cues the band.
Yep.
Towards the end of a solo, things like that too. And I think what it does, it keeps you honest.
Yeah.
Oh, 2, 4, 6, 8, great, right? And if you want to, you can double it.
Yeah.
So let me just play back. There's my solo.
Yeah.
Right?
Indeed.
And it took you on a journey. You've got familiarity with the motifs.
Yeah.
So the listener, and especially if they're not guitar players, they don't care how flashy you are.
Right.
They just want to hear music.
Yeah.
So I say play melodic motifs that then you take someone on a journey towards the ending. And it's a great place, great way of me keeping myself honest where I am in the music.
Yeah.
And it's just the way I do things.
Yeah, similar to in blues, you do typically, if you're running a 12-bar blues, you'll have your lick over the first 4 bars, your lick over the second 4 bars,
Yeah.
and then some sort of turnaround lick or something to bring it back home.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of the times, especially on my gigs, I'm playing at resorts and people are there having wine with their wife and having dinner.
Sure.
They're not there to see me like be flash and throw the guitar behind my head.
Right.
But that doesn't mean I can't enjoy myself.
Right.
So what I tend to do is I reference the melody of the song.
Yeah.
So on Ain't No Sunshine, ain't no sunshine when she's gone. That's how I start my solo.
Right, right.
And what that does is it references the melody. It doesn't throw people off because
Right.
it's you ripping into a face-melting solo.
Right, yes.
And it's a great way to soft start a solo,
Yes.
right?
I love
And
that.
I could just play the motif and the melody and be done.
Right.
Because a horn player probably would, right? He
Mm-hmm.
would do something probably very melodic and then a phrased run
Mm-hmm.
out.
Yeah.
So I try to package my lines like that.
Yeah. So I like what you said there. A horn player would do that. Now, why would a horn player do that as opposed to another instrument?
I think with the horn player, they're not chordal instruments.
Mm-hmm.
We, as guitar players, we have to remember we're doing a lot of things. The drummer, the bass player, and the horn players
Mm-hmm.
have a lot to do, obviously. But a guitar player has to be rhythmic, stylistic, chordal, improvisational solo lines. We've got all the gear.
And loudest in the band.
And the loudest. Well, we can do that. We have the technology. So I think it's those things. We have a lot to think about. And, you know, the horn player, he's either playing lines that are written sometimes right for him, and then if it's an improvised part, it's single note lines.
Yeah.
So they probably practice that more than anything.
Yeah. And they also have to breathe, right?
Got to breathe between the notes.
Which is if you know, you've heard of licks before. That's originally where that came from, because after the guys would sax and do their little sax bit and they'd lick their lips, or chops. That's where we get that name. So you know what horn players have maybe to their advantage is they have to phrase because they have to breathe. Unless you're Kenny G, and then you get to do whatever you want. But if you're not Kenny G and you're doing the circular breathing, which, you know, I was going to make a Kenny G joke there, but I won't. Then, you know, as a guitar player, we can just play all over everything. And because we can, we oftentimes do, which is the kiss of death. It's like the whole point of playing music, it's a conversation. Right? Yeah. If I talked over you the whole time, especially as the guest, or if you didn't let me ask you questions and it was just you talking all the time, that would be very strange. It wouldn't be this interaction. But music's all about ebb and flow and you know, tension and release, right? And filling in those places. So I love when I listen to a good production. I'm a big fan of Mutt Lange, a million producers that I love, but Mutt seemed to have, which AC/DC, Def Leppard, Shania Twain, a bunch of stuff. But if you listen to his productions, your ears will go listen to the bass line, then all of a sudden it's listen to the vocal line and then the guitar line, and it's like all those guys are still playing the whole time.
Oh yeah.
But they have their little moment where they jump out of the mix because they're phrasing, and the rest of the time they're bolstering up or lifting up the other musicians to where it's just, because that's beautiful music when you hear that, like an orchestra, right?
Well, it is orchestration, yeah, and that's it. And I think as a musician as opposed to a guitar player, you should be thinking in terms of what your band members are doing, you know, what's happening in the track and what's appropriate.
Yes.
And it's not about just showing what you can do, it's what's appropriate.
Right.
And I try to do that, and if there's a moment to shine, there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Right.
But just not all the time. So I'm trying to find a supporting role as opposed to a shining role.
Yes, I love that.
And what happens, I think, a lot of the time is you're appreciated by the other musicians.
Yes.
And maybe you get more opportunities because of that.
Yeah.
God, take a solo, because they know it's not going to be crazy and off the charts. It's going to be respectful to the music.
Respectful, yes, yeah.
So I always say to guys, try and do that as well, and think in terms of packaging an idea or a full solo as opposed to just putting your head down. And I've done this at workshops. I've said to the guys, okay, you're all going to take an 8-bar solo. And so I would play one, then cue the guy. and the guy's head goes down and he starts into his riffs and everything else. He's just playing his chops. He's not even listening to the music. And they would look up like a minute later and go, was that it? And I go, it was like 108 bars. And that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Really think about, all right, what are measures of music and how do I identify those? So at the beginning you heard me count my scratch.
Right.
I identified that I was going to record 4 times, right? 2 2-bar loops. And you have to really know that stuff. If you're going to work with other musicians, you have to understand measures of music, time, subdivisions. If you don't, you won't be able to interact with other people.
Right.
So it's key.
Yeah.
And the looper will help you do that.
Now you mentioned, knowing the chord that you're on, and this is what I've found to be true for the difference between most amateur guitar players and most professional guitar players. And what I mean by professional is not necessarily making money, but just the difference between a great player and a player who's just playing.
Right.
But so why would knowing the chord have anything to do with it? Why can't we just take a chord progression and throw a scale on top of it? Like, what does hearing the chord have anything to do with it?
Well, what people need to realize is if you've got a chord progression, and a progression is 2 chords or more, right? If it's 1 chord, it's a vamp. If it's 2 or more chords, it's a progression. And a progression is going to have a tonal center, and a tonal center is where your ear hears the resolution point. So let's say, for example, the chord progression I played was A minor, C, and D, back to A minor. So if I just play that for you, just real simple. That's the tonal center. You can hear that's home.
Yes.
Right? So there's a couple of ways you can approach soloing over that. First of all, understand where the chords come from. So A minor, C, and D, they're all in the key of G. So this is a Dorian progression. So it's A Dorian. All right, don't let that freak you out, guys. It's just a tonal center name. Dorian's just the 2 mode of the G major scale. So A minor, C, D. I'm going to target phrases towards that. Now, given that we've got the G major scale that these chords come from, we can apply that G major scale but resolve to the tones of A minor. So A, C, and E. Right? So if I was to do that, I could play in my G major scale here. Now you hear it's not going home when I did that.
Right, yes.
But if I do this, hear the difference?
Yeah.
So now I'm playing towards the tonal center of that progression. So you can still use A minor pentatonic, but you can also use A Dorian, which is adding 2 more notes.
Right.
So knowing that that's my tonal center, what I do is I phrase ideas towards the tonal center. And I don't worry about the other 2 chords because they're passing chords. They're moving.
Gotcha. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Can you give us an example?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you're saying that when those because those chords are passing so quickly, for you to play on top of them might almost sound too deliberate.
Well, what you can do is you can play through those, and what happens is because your ear hears the tonal center of the chord progression, and you phrase towards that, when the chords are moving under your lines, it makes your lines sound interesting, providing you don't end your line there. Because what they're doing is the chords are doing the work to make you sound interesting.
Yes.
Providing you're targeting home. So let me do that. I'll record that loop just really simply, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Okay, so there's home, isn't it?
Right.
Here. So that's the D, so now I'm going to phrase towards the A. Hear it? what you're hearing me do is listen to the chords, and when it went C, D, and was hanging out there, that's where I could play my phrase going home.
Yeah.
Instead of playing right on top of the beat and then going, okay, now I've got 2 bars to get through that bar on the D.
Right, yeah.
I'm listening to see where home is.
Yeah.
And understanding that, where your chords come from, what the tonal center is, the resolution point of your chord progression, means that you phrase your ideas to resolve towards it.
Yeah, I love that.
Makes it a lot easier than going, well, I'm playing all these notes, but it's not really saying anything. But you heard me package ideas, didn't you?
Yeah. So now I get this question a ton. I get it all the time about phrasing, and so, you know, and we had a little discussion right before the broadcast here, that a lot of folks, they'll say, okay, well, I've got this progression in A minor, and I've got an A minor scale, or I have an A minor pentatonic scale. Right. And Eric, I'm playing through the scale, I know it. In fact, I know it. I know all 7 positions, I know 5 positions, whatever. And I'm doing all this, but it just doesn't sound right to me. Can you address that from that organic question of them not even knowing? Like, I've got the scales, I've got the chord progression, but it doesn't sound the same way. What do you think is the missing variable there?
We're knowing the resolution point of the chord too and the chord tones. So chord tones are what I call sweet notes. And if you're not targeting the sweet notes and landing on them, when you end a phrase, you should be on a chord tone. They're the strongest tones that you can play over any chord. So for example, if I've got...
Let me interrupt you real quick. Does someone have to know the theory of this, or can this be done with the ear?
You can do it with your ear, and you can also see it. So there's 3 ways you can do it, right? You can understand the theory, hear it, or see it. And here's what I would do. So for example, guys, I know a lot of people play A minor differently. I'm going to do it here with an A minor pentatonic. So here's an A minor 7 chord. Okay, or here. Now I visually can see my chord tones, can't I? Now if I play my scale, I can see and hear my chord. Now I have a reference point to where home base is, or chord tones. So what I do is I say to guys, okay, we know we've got a framework of a scale, we can see our chord, now target these notes, right? So do this. Can you just play me an A minor and I'll do it? Is that all right? Right, so there's the note in the chord thing, right? So just the A minor.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's resolution.
And that's...
There's the minor 3rd, right? Here in the chord, can't you? So now I can do this. That's the 5th, E, right? Now I'm going to target the A. Right?
If I was playing that version of it, but nonetheless I'm playing an A here and an A up there.
Now if you play a minor 7 chord, A minor 7, I'm going to play the 7th in the chord now. So, and that's a little more exotic sounding.
Right, yeah.
So what I say to guys is a great way to structure a solo is stay in your framework, package ideas to the root, the 3rd, the 5th, the flat 7, and then back to the root note. It's a great way of developing a solo. So for example, if I did this. I've just taken you on a journey through all of the chord tones, which made my solo, well, that could have been a solo. Right? All right, it was a little repetitive. Nothing wrong with that.
But it's one chord. Do you suggest that someone who's new to loopers or maybe to jam tracks or whatever, would you suggest that they start with vamps as opposed to chord progressions?
Very much so. You know, we do this in the course.
Woohoo! There we go. So Robbie, what that is that's someone just donated some money here to us for. Oh, beautiful. We just had two folks. Thank you so much. Double shot of 20s coming in. Beautiful. Thank you. So Robbie and the boys and I are going to be eating lunch after this, so we will raise a glass to you, Brent. Thank you. Please don't play the music. This is highly informative. Okay, sorry, we did. Great lesson show. Thank you, Sage and Robbie. Okay, beautiful. Okay, we will not play the music then. Yeah. So going back to vamps, right? Why do you suggest that they might just vamp one chord with their looper as opposed to a chord progression?
Well, what I've seen with a lot of guys is you're not concentrating on the things that are going to make you better quicker. So I say you've really got to boil this down into the basics, right? Learn the chord. So if you know this chord, now break it down into its parts. So know the notes in the chord.
Yeah.
That's one really simple practice session, isn't it? Right? So do that. You understand that. Now that you know that, and let's say you know the scale that can work over it, understand in your scale where the root note is. Right? So if I do this, or the tonic of the scale, right? And that's the root of the chord. Now where's my minor third in that? Well, it's here, here, and here. Now where's the fifth, right? So it's here and here. These are my resolution points on that chord.
Right.
Then what you can do is say, okay, I'm going to play a vamp into my looper, and I'm going to concentrate on targeting the chord tones.
Yes.
Phrasing ideas towards the tonal center, which is just one chord.
Yeah.
Makes it easier for you, doesn't it?
Yeah. Whenever I'm teaching this to folks that are new to this whole idea of being cognizant of the chord, I call it either chasing the root, because that's the way I originally teach them, is just don't even worry about anything but the root. Because if you just do that, if that chord progression is going from A to C to D, it literally, well, probably in this chord progression not as much, because those chords pass through fairly quickly. But if you were doing something like Stairway to Heaven, you know, A minor, G, and F, those, you know, 1, 2, you got 2 beats per chord, and so like literally you can phrase around those chords, and so I say concentrate on whatever the tonic of that, or the root of that chord is, and then you can, and it's going to sound more like you're having a conversation with the music, because a lot of folks will say, well, why can't I just use the scale over it? And to that I would answer, you know, it's kind of like if we're talking, okay, that's one thing, that's real general, we're talking, and we're talking about politics, well, that's something, but if we're talking about a specific subject, that's a whole nother thing. So if Robbie keeps talking about balancing the budget, and I just talk randomly about politics, and even though we're both talking about politics, he's talking about balancing the budget, then that would be akin to, you're playing in the right key, but you're not being cognizant and saying to the listeners and the players, I know what chord you're talking about. I feel for you. I know what you're talking about. I always relate it back to conversations, because a good music should be very conversational, right?
It should. You know, it is. I always say to people, listen first, respond second.
Yeah.
And because if you're not listening, how do you respond?
Yeah.
So if you're not responding to the music, you're not listening.
Yeah.
So the other thing is, and this is what I see happen a lot too, is people learn a scale shape, and guys, would you say your third finger or your first finger is stronger?
Yeah.
For most people, it's probably the third finger. So where do they end up resolving?
Yeah.
Where they end is on this note here in their pentatonic scale, and it's the weakest one in the scale. All of the other notes are in the chord. And that's the one place that you don't want to be ending a phrase.
Yeah.
But muscle memory, so when you practice your ideas and your scales, understand that you need to control where your fingers go. Don't let your hand control you.
Yes.
And I see this a lot on an A minor thing. People will go, well, it's the weakest note in the chord.
Yeah.
Could you just play me that A minor 7 again? Wonderful. So, all right, but if I do this, feels stronger, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So start controlling your fingers. These fingers don't move without, you know, impulses from the brain.
Right.
And I've said to guys, there's a great way of you getting it out of that. Actually, can we do it?
Yeah, sure.
With you just playing an A minor vamp or something.
Yeah.
So I go, yeah. So what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to cycle through the scale, starting on the next note of the scale, to start each phrase. Right, so.
Little Gilmore there at the end.
Right. Yeah,
Sure.
so what I was doing, you probably saw me just step through. So each phrase started on the next note of the scale as I went through.
Yeah.
That's breaking muscle memory.
Yes.
Because if you just play something, you have no idea where it's going to end.
Yeah.
I purposely was listening,
Yes.
responding, and guiding what I was going to do, because I said I was going to do it.
Yeah.
So I would say to guys, really sit, and where the looper comes in, record that, little simple thing, not complex, means you can really listen, really target all of the tones, and start packaging phrases, as opposed to just playing notes.
Yeah.
That's where the power is, and sometimes that means it's going to be painful because you've got to slow down.
Yeah.
But it's where the magic works, and speed is a byproduct of accuracy.
Oh, I love that you say that, because I say that all the time. I'm like, it doesn't happen before.
No.
It doesn't happen before. Just always, inaccuracy is something that you can get right now, even if you've just started playing guitar. You can get accurate.
Yep.
Just slow it down to where you can do it, and it's a byproduct. Speed is a byproduct of accuracy. I love that you said that.
Thank you. Yeah.
And so if they're concentrating on that one chord, this is going to get you used to doing exactly what Robbie's talking about in regards to playing through the progression. But here you only have one chord. See, what happens is a lot of times people jump into this right away and they're doing 2 or maybe even 3 chords. I should say 3, maybe even 2 chords. And so what that does is every time the chord changes, now your chordal, your color notes are moving. And so you're going to have to shift in your brain. It's just like shifting in the chords right in the beginning. And if you're not mentally prepared to do that, then it's going to be very frustrating to you. It's like someone pushing you. So either if you're going to do that, first work with the vamp, right, is your suggestion. And then if you're going to work with 2 or more chords, make sure that there's enough space in between those chords that you can go, okay, here comes that G chord, it's coming up, I'm preparing for it, I see where those color notes are, and there I go, right?
With that, and you can expand upon the vamp as well. So let's say, for example, you've done your A minor chord, A minor 7 chord, and everything else. You understand where the chord tones are and the scale and how it works. What I would say to guys next is, let's make it just a tiny bit more interesting. Don't move away from the vamp. So I would do something like this. Now that's an A11 chord, so it's minor and dominant, just because it's got that flat 7 in it. So it's the same kind of chord, but what it gives me is a couple other tones, the D and the B. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put that as a loop, right? And I'm going to show you why I did what I did.
Right, okay.
Okay, so let's do that. So.
That's really pretty, yeah. I like that idea.
Hear that 9?
So using some variation of the chord, giving it a little embellishment.
Very much so, but knowing what that is, you can see it, can't you?
Yeah.
Oh, so he moved out of his shape here to this note, which is why in my solo, I went to it.
Yeah.
It's a chord tone now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, because that's a chord tone, it's going to be strong to hit that over that chord.
Yeah.
So it gives me a melodic flavour now, so this feels more like a progression, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Albeit it's still very static.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to practice. And do it note by note. Like you said, nail that root.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the minor third sound like? Oh, sounds great.
Yeah.
Then go to the fifth, go to the flat seven. Oh, and if there's an extension, this is the 9, start hitting that, even if it's not in your scale.
Yeah.
Because you're telling your fingers what to do, so you can add it to the scale.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that.
And it's powerful, and guys, if you were to practice something like that in your practice session, let's say it's an hour or 2 hours, you just did something that made you better quickly.
Yeah.
If you don't ever do those kind of things and concentrate on key elements, you won't get better.
Indeed. And that's to me, that's like one of the best practices ever, because if you're running through your scales, if you're running through your chords, what have you, it's like that's all fine and dandy. You'll be able to play those things well, but you're not really inciting the creative part of you that needs to come up with something just on the spot. The difference would be a good comedian who can riff off of things that you're saying. They can improvise with props or whatever, as opposed to someone who can tell a really great story that's really funny, but it's the same story every single time. So two different modalities there. But if you're actually working and thinking about that stuff, it's like your mind expands and it becomes very good at it very quickly.
Well, I think
but you have to push yourself into it.
You do, and I think your analogy there with a comedian, a lot of them are riffing because they're observant. And what they can do is they can look into the audience and some woman's laughing loudly with her mouth open.
Yeah.
They can go, oh, and they make some kind of comment.
Yeah.
So they're observant comedians.
Yeah.
If you're an observant musician, means you're listening.
Yes.
Which means you can then respond or react to what's happening.
Yeah.
So I think you have to become more observant about your playing. You don't just learn a scale verbatim and then blow a bunch of lines.
Yeah.
You become very purposeful and intentful towards what you're going to play.
Yeah.
Now you probably see me very intentfully playing things, right?
Yeah.
So I built a lick vocabulary that I can change at a moment's notice. So for example, if I want to do something like this. I've got some lick vocabulary, but I can alter any one of those licks at a moment's notice.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So I know how to manipulate my licks and phrase them to work in whatever situation is coming up.
Yes.
So I think once you start getting inside your chords, inside your scales, and inside your phrasing, and start managing what your fingers do instead of letting them do the stuff.
Indeed.
You will have power over it.
Yeah. I love that. Man, I could riff on that with you forever. I want to get to a couple things.
Yeah.
We definitely want to get to some questions here. But before we do that, Chris, do we have those picks?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to do, I went deep diving into Instagram and Facebook and the web here. So we've got a few picks that I want to ask you some questions about.
Sure.
So first off, this one, who's this guy?
I don't know who that is. He looks dodgy though. Then my brother sent me that, would you believe?
I love that. So I had to deep dive on your Facebook there to find that one.
No, that's horrible. Don't do that again.
That's just to get us loosened up here.
Great
All right,
news.
yeah. So first off, If you guys don't know, Robbie used to live here in Nashville. Before that, I guess you lived in LA, right? Because you went to JIT, and then you lived in London and probably a slew of other places, or?
No, well, and south coast of England. I grew up predominantly. I was born in London, but grew up predominantly on the south coast of England.
Yeah. So you're in Hawaii now, which is absolutely beautiful, and I love watching your Instagram. But by the way, we've got all of Robbie's credentials in the description of this video. We'll be posting some of them on the screen here, but follow Robbie because he has some beautiful pictures of Hawaii as well as your playing and everything else. So
I try to leave those out because people say they hate me too much.
Yeah. So and there was I know I see him all the time, and it's 20 degrees here-ish right now. And so I asked Robbie the first thing when he walked in. I said, "What's the temperature in Hawaii?" He said 84. So he knew right off the bat.
Oh yeah.
So a couple pairs of pants there drying out. So you can fill in the blanks. It looks like that was a good day right there.
So that's around the back of where I live. It's
Okay.
absolutely stunning where I live in Hulualoa, and it's on the Big Island. And so I've driven my Jeep around the back there because it's in the sun at the moment. So nothing dries because it stays very moist. So I put my jeans on my Jeep so they can dry.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
So
that
I
makes
call
sense.
it Hawaiian laundrette. You know?
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, what else do we have here, Chris? So I saw this on your Instagram, and I just fell in love with that quilted top. That is absolutely amazing, and the Bigsby, of course. So now I noticed that you play a lot of Yamaha.
Yeah, Yamaha. Been working with Yamaha now for nearly 3 years, and I did some stuff with them about 5 years ago, and got reconnected about 3 years ago, and that was one of the first guitars that Yamaha sent to me to do some videos on. And it's the Revstar 720B in the Revstar range. This is a Revstar as well. This is the 502T FM.
Which sounds amazing.
Thank you, with the P90s. Now that has Filtertrons, the other guitar has Filtertron pickups, which are humbuckers, but they have a single coil sensibility to them. And I love that guitar. Number one, it looks amazing, so I want to play it. It plays amazingly and it translates me very well. I like how it does that. So, love the shape. It's different enough to say that I'm an artist and I have my own feel and look. And I always say to guys, you know, pick one of these guitars up because I think it's going to blow your mind just how good it is.
Yeah.
At a great price point with all solid woods.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with them. They got the jumbo frets, just great to play.
Yeah.
And super stable for travel and everything else. So yeah, I fell in love with the Revstar range, and then started doing clinics and videos and things for Yamaha, and got to really learn their acoustics as well. And it's the only company I know of that has a variety of pickup systems in different acoustics. Okay. So Atmosphere in the FG Red label, which has a sensor, a pickup, and a transducer, a microphone, sorry, and a transducer. And A-Series, which has mic modeling in it, plus a piezo. And it's Neumann and ribbon microphones.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So you've got all these options, and then you've got Transacoustic, which has the reverb and chorus technology in it, even though you're not plugged in. So you start looking at the Yamaha range of products. Not only are they incredibly well made, affordable, I say affordable for, you know, the pro guy, even the beginner, and they're going to sound great, they last well, and they have different options. Yeah. Now the Revstar range, you know, you've got humbuckers, P90s, Filtertrons, you know, a Bigsby and stuff like that. So you've got lots of different finishes and stuff. And I love the wire-walled finish. Yeah. You guys, you can probably see there's not too much glare on it, right? So it's great on camera.
Which our camera guys love.
Yeah, because it's not going to blow up the screen. So anyway, lots of huge pluses with the Yamaha, and I love the people. They've been incredible to
I've
work
never played a Yamaha that I didn't love.
Yeah.
In fact, my first guitar moving to Nashville is a Yamaha acoustic. I still have it. It's a jumbo body, and it was that before I didn't have the money for the SJ200, the Gibson, which I have now. And I mean, I played that one thing for years. Saw so many gigs, and the Pacificas. I mean, we gave some Pacificas away. Great guitars.
I've got one here in my studio here, and it's I got it set up with Joe Glazer. The trem is the smoothest I've ever played. It's just a wicked guitar.
Yeah.
And I think it's only like $250.
Yeah.
And it's got a flame top on it and everything. You know.
Yeah, it's crazy what they can do.
Really.
now.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so let's see what else we've got here, what I've dug up. So I was looking at this and I was actually listening to these tones this week. This is a killer pedal you've got here, man.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. So about 10 years ago, I met Tim Yarnig at the amp show here, and he was designing custom amps for Peavey at the time. Now he's got a legacy of works of pedals that he's designed for a bunch of companies. But anyway, he was doing that, and I played through one of the amps, and he said to me, "You don't sound like anyone else. You just have your own thing." And I said, "Well, thank you." So we stayed in touch, and then a few years ago he said to me, "When are we doing your signature pedal?" I said, "Tomorrow."
Nice.
He said, "What do you want?" And I said, "Absolutely has to have the compressor on the front end." And I like low-powered tube amps. That's before I started working with Helix.
Right.
And I still love those amps. So we modelled it on an EL84 Vox AC15 and a 6v6 kind of Princeton kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you've got two different flavours. So in that pedal, that size, compression and two overdrives. And he said it's the best pedal he's ever made.
Yeah.
And it sounds the best.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're hand wired, all made by hand. And if anyone wants them, you can go to rcsoldriver.com and I can take your order. And I personally take the orders and stay in touch with you.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
nice.
it's
I
a
think we have
boutique approach.
I think we have a link for that in the description of the video as well.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah, check out that tone. It's really good stuff.
Really good, yeah.
Okay, what else we got, Chris? Do we have any others? No more pictures. Okay, so I want to let's go ahead and do the WTF WTG segment. The WTF, who's that guitarist? This is two guitar players that I'm following on Instagram now. We were talking, Robbie and I were talking just earlier before the show that there just seems to be so many amazing guitar players now. Even more so than ever, just because people keep having babies and they keep playing guitar, and also, you know, standing on the shoulders of giants. So I listened to this first guitar player that you're going to see here. Both of them are amazing players, insane players. But the very first one reminded me of Tony McAlpine. And it turns out that he's a big fan and what have you, but it's like it's even yet at this other level. So I always like to show these segments to you guys to turn you on to some new guitar players. So let's check this out. Jesus, right? So that's the first guy is Daniel Gottardo, Gottardo, Daniel Gottardo, and Lee Leland. So Lee, Leee, Lund. So look those guys up on Instagram. Amazing players. I've been watching both of those guys, and they're just
amazing.
like, dear Lord, the technique and just everything. Beautiful. Okay, let's get to some questions. I know, folks, that we could have riffed all day on this, but that's why we're going to do a course, right?
If you wonder why I'm laughing, I've just read one of these questions. Right?
Oh, did you? Which one?
Hey, Chris, get Eric to ask Robbie where he got his scarf. My grandmother would love it.
Isn't that's bad to the bone, man? I love that.
Hey, I got it from your grandma.
Grandma's pissed right now.
That's right. Cheeky bugger.
Oh, cheeky. Oh, yeah, they get cheeky on
I
you
like
for
it.
sure, man.
I can give as good as I get.
All right, let's get to some questions here. Friends, if you would, all caps and a question mark, but I'm going to go back here because we've been riffing a lot here, and I know there's probably some questions earlier. So somebody's really wanting to know where you got that scarf for sure.
Where did I get this? I got it online, and then I cut it in half because it was really thick. Mm-hmm. And I really like it, especially when it's freezing cold here.
What half did you cut off? Because it looked...
I cut it down the middle because it was so thick.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay,
So now I've got
that
two
makes
scarves.
sense. So the Sleepy McCush is saying, will music theory help you play better on a looper? Just curious, because I've been focused a lot on trying to learn theory behind it and the basic chords. I have a notebook I've been writing things in.
Absolutely. I always say to anyone, if you can learn theory, it doesn't hurt. I always say learn as much as you can that's relevant to you. Mm-hmm. Right? And if you're asking that question, it's relevant.
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
I 100% agree. And if you don't want to learn music theory, then don't. Just learn just learn the fundamentals of what music's about.
Right.
Which is music theory. Just learn the shape of music, right?
Yeah.
Like people, it's comical to me because I've never heard a good musician say, unless they're just uneducated about their own education, which I hear that all the time, Dave Grohl or whatever. I don't know any music theory. It's like, you know tons of music theory. You don't know that you don't know music theory. You know tons of patterns and all the rest. And that's okay for people like that don't know that they don't know. It's just unfortunate because then when you hear them say that and then other people go, look, see, Hendrix didn't know any theory or whatever. And it's like, no, they knew tons of this. They just didn't know what they just didn't know. They knew it from the ear perspective, but it's all the same thing.
Well, yeah, but then Hendrix, you could say, is 1 in a million people.
Yeah.
And if you want to stand out and understand music and be better, I would say there's a plethora of competition out there, guys, right? How many guitar players in town are better than both of us?
Oh my God.
Thousands.
There's
right?
like
So, but what is it that we have?
3 guitar players in here that are better than me now, so.
But that's the thing, isn't it? But it's not a competition, but if you can improve yourself in any way, shape or form, I always say do it.
Yeah, 100%.
You know.
It's just understanding, it's like Robbie was saying, this is an A minor chord, and then, theory is just the knowledge of music, and so theory tells you, or if you understand it, you'll say, okay, well, these are the chord tones, or you can just look, and you can say, okay, well, these are the ones that Robbie was saying are the color tones. These are the ones that, if I'm playing a riff, I probably want to resolve on one of those notes. If I resolve on any other note, it wants to pull back to one of those notes.
That's right.
So if you want to add tension, you can do it. But but knowing what it is, okay, I'm going to add some tension in this lick. The song's getting aggressive here, and I want to add some tension, so you may not land on that note. But then if you want to resolve it, it's the end of the song, end of your solo, you might want to have the option to resolve it. But if you don't know what that note is, then how are you going to do that,
Absolutely.
Great questions. All right. Let me zing all the way to the bottom here because I know we probably have some questions
Molokai to play tips at 2 bars. Ryan Duggar, I'd love to come to Molokai. Short flight, very small island. I would do it in a heartbeat. So connect with me on my email or any of my socials. I'll come over there and play a gig and teach a workshop.
I love that.
Would love it.
And your website is robbiecalvo.com?
Yeah, and you'd send me a message there. So Ryan, shout out to me, it'd be great.
Do you have new plans for True Fire courses?
Nothing at the moment. We did 3 launched at the beginning of this year. But right now what I'm doing is I'm trying to broaden my horizons a little bit because after 28 videos, right, that's a legacy of works there. And I love the True Fire guys, but it's nice to be able to expand obviously into your fan base and some other people that I'm working with. Plus, honestly, a lot of guys have said to me, are you gigging much this year? Well, you know what, things changed for me this year a little bit, and I got so busy with clinics, filming, and doing demos and stuff like that, and traveling. I've been to Japan and the States a number of times.
Yeah.
So what that does is it cuts into your schedule, and when it cuts into your schedule, courses take a long time to put together.
Yeah.
Right. So we know we've got months of time that we've got to concentrate on something. And I've just been so broken and running.
Yeah.
I just haven't had much time to do too much of that.
Yeah, it's a lot of planning, putting a course together.
A lot of planning, and things are expanding with Yamaha for me, which is wonderful, which is where I want it to go.
Yeah, good.
And I would say, guys, if things change for you, go with it. It's not happening to you, it's happening for you.
Oh, I love that. This is why we, right?
Yeah.
Brother from another mother. How can I learn better songwriting? So you've written songs here in Nashville, right? Any songs that we would know, country-wise or pop or what?
I had a song, God Bless the World, that was out last year or the year before with an independent artist that did very well, that I wrote with Alex Call, who's an amazing songwriter here. A lot of these songs are legacies from when I lived here. Yeah. 10 years ago maybe, right, that you've written. I always say to guys, if you write songs, understand that they live forever. They never, you can repackage them, I'll reharmonize a song that I've written to make it relevant now. Yeah. Right, you change it, you can change the tempo, the chord structures. Yeah. the melodies. If you write a good song, it never dies.
Yeah.
Just remember that, and it might have value 10 years from now even.
Exactly. See the Beatles.
Yeah,
Melissa, my wife's a songwriter. I don't know if I told you this or not. She's a songwriter, writes for Disney currently. But she recently had a couple songs go on Garth Brooks' album, and both of those songs were songs that were written 10, 11 years prior to that, that were in the archives.
Yeah.
And Garth was like, I want some legit country songs, not what's playing today. I want some legit country songs. Give me some older stuff. And so he's literally sat and listened to these catalogs, and he's like, boom, that one and that one. So it's like a perfect example. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you hear that all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Eric, how to create a solo keeping the bars and chord progressions in mind? I'm not sure specifically what you mean by that. We'd have to probably get some more detail unless you know what they're asking there specifically.
Yeah, really. So you've got to keep the bars in mind. You've got to understand what the progression is, how many bars the progression is, right? What the resolution point is of the chords. And once you know what the chords and the chord progressions are, like I said earlier, you can target the tonal center with your phrasing. And I think it's imperative to know and listen to that. You might not understand the theory of all the chords, but if you understand where it's coming from and the length that it is, let's say it's a 2-bar progression, you know you can phrase within that 2-bar section to go home.
Yeah.
All right. And yeah, if you're listening intently, you can probably pick up the chords.
Yeah.
So just listen and target the tonal center.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I would add to that is start simple. So like what Robbie was saying, just vamp on one chord. Just get your timing down, you know. Less is more, especially in the beginning when you can get your hands wrapped around a chord or two and make sure that you're playing it in rhythm. And if you're using a looper, it has to be in rhythm. So, you know, start off with a simple vamp and then maybe go to 2 chords. And like what I always tell students is let those chords play for a little bit, you know. So maybe not 1 measure per chord, but 2 measures or 4 measures per chord. And what this does is it gives you time to prepare, okay, that other chord's coming up, the chord's coming up, lets you start shifting the mentality towards getting over there. This is what every guitar player, every amazing guitar player that you know does, but maybe they're able to do it much quicker because they've gotten more practice at it. So if you're watching Slash or Yngwie Malmsteen or Joe Bonamassa or whoever, it doesn't matter. They're listening to these chords, they're passing by much quicker than you will at first, but everybody had to start in the beginning. There's nobody who got a free ride and just jumped into playing complex stuff. It's never happened ever. Maybe someone progressed there quicker, but that has much to do with their determination and their just passion, their draw, their addiction to the instrument, you know, or music in general.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take one more. We've kind of gone over a little bit here, but I could talk with you forever. So actually, let's take 2 more because you see one, and then I also saw someone saying something about the Ditto. Is that a good one to start off with?
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, the TC Electronic Ditto. And then you saw another question there, Robbie. Let's take that one.
So what's the best practice regime to improve playing fast? Oh, and then the Hawaiian thing. Oh,
Sure,
yeah,
we'll
we
get
could
to
be
that.
all day.
Yeah.
So, but the Ditto Looper, Ditto Looper, one switch, one knob, right? If you get the simple one, it's perfect, right? Because it's about your execution more than the product.
Yeah.
And like I say, I've got Helix here. Don't get freaked out that I've got a pedal board here. One pedal at the end of your signal chain of pedals before your amplifier, that looper pedal, will capture what you're putting into it, all right? And about the timing, guys, know where your tempo is. Reference with your hand, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and execute. 2 and 3 and 4 and execute, right?
Yes.
So there's your in and out points. If you get that right, then add your chords to it.
Yeah.
Right? What is it I'm going to record and how long is it? So doesn't have to be a complex looper pedal, guys. They all pretty much do the same thing. Right? That's why they're called loopers and they're not called Looper Plus or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So yes, go simple first, and then if you don't get on with it, you didn't overinvest.
Yeah.
All right, and then most of them aren't that expensive.
Yeah. Here's a question that we talked about earlier. Robbie, what's the best practice regime to improve playing fast?
limit your time. There was a question in here about I've only got 5-10 minutes to play guitar. Great, 5-10 minutes is plenty. What is it you're going to do in your 5 and 10 minutes, right? So I would say, okay, I've got 5 minutes before I get out the door. I'm working on my A minor 7 arpeggio. All right, where's my first octave? Okay. Okay, now I'm going to go past the octave. Now I'm going to play a lick. Okay, what was that, a minute? Okay, so tomorrow you've got 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm going to work on my A7 arpeggios in position. Designate what you can practice in that time and do it. And if you hold yourself to that, at the end of the week you'll go, God, I learned 3 arpeggio shapes.
Yeah.
Right, and I know you've got to get it off the page.
Which
or
maybe you
whatever,
learn
but-
major and minor, then you've literally taken care of like 99% of the chords you'll probably experience.
Exactly.
Or 95, something like that.
Focused time is better than, I always say to guys, if you pull up a jam track and you jam over that for 2 hours and widdly over it, you've learnt nothing but practice muscle memory.
Yeah.
Take 5 minutes and apply it.
Yes.
You'll learn a lot.
Yes. Focus, practice, indeed.
Focus.
And one other one that I want to address here, Robbie, we talked about this earlier, which I had never heard anybody else say it other than myself, is speed is a byproduct of accuracy, and I think you might have said it exactly like that, which I say that all the time. You know, if you're trying to get fast at something, I go as far as saying, don't focus on getting fast.
No.
Focusing will happen, I should say, speed will happen because you've done something repetitively. Now, once you start working up to the speed of, you know, what these guys were that we just saw, then yes, that's a different type of practice. But unless you're there, and chances are if you're there, you know how to get to there. But in those cases then it's about working with a metronome, pushing yourself beyond what you're capable of doing now. It's like going to the gym. Bodybuilders don't get to be ripped and looking like that by lifting the same weights every day. They go there by lifting more every single day. They're challenging their bodies constantly. And when you're at that speed, then yes, you do have to, there's specific regimens that you need to do with a metronome, and it's pushing against your edge. But in regards to just getting faster, for what 95% of folks are talking about, wouldn't you agree that just playing something accurately and finding the accurate way, the good process of playing whatever it is you're trying to do?
Absolutely, and I think also what you have to do is you have to be honest with yourself. I know a lot of players think they played it accurately, and they go, okay, I'm going to record you right now.
Yes.
And then you play it back to them and they go, oh, I'm flubbing all over the place. And you go, yeah, you're not paying attention. So slow it down. And here's the number one thing I say to guys. If you have a practice routine, you can record things, which you can in a looper, record a scratch in there in time. That might be hard for you. That's going to work on your timing. But if you can, work with some percussion loops or drum loops and record what you think is perfect and listen back. And I guarantee you, you're going to hear things you never heard before.
Yeah.
And you have to be your own teacher sometimes. You can't keep coming to other people and asking their opinion.
Yes.
Start listening to yourself, and if you're not making it happen, tighten it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
You've
got to be honest.
Yes, indeed.
So yeah, but you know, be musical too. It's not all about speed as well.
Yeah. Robbie, you are a wealth of knowledge and just a great guy. I'm so glad that we're doing this this week. We'll let you guys know more about this as we, you know, it takes a little while to prepare all this, and we've been talking for, I don't know, at least a couple months now, and the crew is ready, and we're going to start recording tomorrow. And so we'll let you guys know as we get closer to getting this thing out. But Robbie, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, my friend.
Just a great guy, great player, great instructor. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here, guys, tuning in as well.
Yeah, we're going to go grab a bite now. So thanks so much. Great questions, y'all.
Thank you.
See you.